everybody to the 2021 Senior Best Speaker Competition. Yes, very, very exciting. We're also live streaming, so if anybody's watching over there, welcome to you as well. Really just to run through some things. When you guys come up to speak, just make sure that you are standing on this beautiful black X so that, you know, for the live streaming it all works out very well. But yeah, a huge, huge, huge welcome to you guys, the students, to our parents, and of course our adjudicator, Romy Levine. Without further ado, I think we should get started, and our first speaker is Hannah Lever.
Monkey bars, Annabeth said. I'm great at these. She leapt onto the first rung and started swinging her way across. As children, we are innocent and excitable. We look forward to the days ahead, and we find joy in everything we do. We don't see the ground beneath us, beckoning for us to release that bar. Now, in real time, said Luke. As I finally lose my grip on that bar and fall, I land in a world completely detached from myself, like Alice in her rabbit hole. I look around and I see two fictional characters from the novel Percy Jackson, The Lightning Thief. They have come back to me now from my childhood to watch me as I've grown over the years and join me on this journey of self-discovery as I reread this book again. Before me, I see Annabeth, an overly ambitious girl who values academics and bravery. And I see Luke, a boy who has been hardened by loss and is not quick to forgive. Suddenly, it hits me. While this is visibly Annabeth and Luke, this is also two aspects of my personality. I have put a lot of pressure on my academics as I strive to fulfill my hopes and dreams for the future. However, sometimes I'm guilty of procrastinating and not really taking action. Annabeth says, and that's all cool and everything, but the real world is where the monsters are. That's where you really see whether you're any good or not. She undeniably believes what she has said, and she will do anything to prove it, because this will prove what is really important to her. She needs to beat these monsters to truly show herself what she is capable of. My monsters are my grades, my anxiety, and my desperation to be someone better than who I am. They follow me through my dreams, turning everything into nightmares in their wake. I have learned from Annabeth that I need to fight these monsters in the real world, and not just think about the importance of truly doing so, if I want to achieve everything that I'm capable of. Unfortunately, sometimes this is not so easy, and hate is fighting against my better judgment in order to prevail. This is my inner Luke. Luke has been hardened by disappointment and rejection, and he allows his evil inclinations to overcome him. Luke says, "Didn't you feel it? The darkness growing, the monsters growing stronger? Didn't you realize how useless it all is?" His tone is bitter because he believes that he is deserving of self-justice, and he has decided that he will no longer be disappointed by what life has thrown at him. He has essentially decided to bow down to his inner demons. Many times I have betrayed myself by bowing down to my inner demons. Where Luke's stem from childhood neglect, mine stem from my insecurities and anxiety. I plan to grow so that mine do not consume me like Luke's, but instead I am able to overcome them and prosper. I turn back to these inspirational mentors who now have tears in their eyes. They bid me farewell as I finally step into adulthood, but I will always hold them close to my heart, and I truly see who I will aspire to be.
profusely apologize for what might be a preposterous and grandiloquent speech, and I hope that it is not too bilious nor irksome, but rather effulgent and vivacious, and able to leave you elated and buoyant. Any English speaker knows that English is one of the most bizarre and baffling languages. Besides for its extremely annoying grammar rules, English also has some of the most difficult words to pronounce. Let's start with Worcestershire sauce. Worcestershire sauce? You know that brown sauce that tastes really good on scrambled eggs but no one can pronounce? And it's quite unfortunate that such a delicious condiment has such a difficult pronunciation. It causes quite a conundrum when an individual like myself with social anxiety has to choose between braving it and asking for the sauce, or just eating dry scrambled eggs. Generally, the latter is the reality for me. Another weirdly pronounced dish is salmon. Why have an L in the middle of it if you're not going to say it? The same can be argued for the P in psychiatrist and psychologist, and the W in wrestle and write, and the K in knife and knuckle. It's now starting to make sense why I have social anxiety. There's so much room for unnecessary pronunciation errors. Moving on. Books are an amazing source of knowledge. However, any bookworm knows that the only issue with learning new words by reading is that it doesn't quite teach you how to pronounce them as much as it does teach you the meaning of them. Sometimes your mind can hold the same amount of vocabulary but comparable to an Oxford dictionary. But as soon as you open your mouth, you come across as an illiterate buffoon holding nothing more than a grade 3 education. For me, this unfortunate word was epiphany. And out of all the words you can mispronounce, you don't want to be mispronouncing one with the word fanny in it. It doesn't go down well in a class of 13-year-olds. However, my most personal and difficult word to say, except for epiglottis, hypothalamus, kernel, and flocky-knocky helioprolification, nailed it, is sorry. Something about that word just doesn't come naturally to me. Perhaps it's due to my chronic perfectionism and fear of being wrong, but I like to call it self-confidence and sticking to my right opinions. Someone told me that this inability to apologize was the reason as to why I had no friends in nursery school, and was given the nickname dictator, without the suffix of tater. However, everyone knows that personal introspection is way too painfully laborious and ego-bruising, and therefore sorry ranks number 1 in the most difficult words to say. Sadly, the speech must come to an end. But as you can see, English is not the kindest language to speak. So, I profusely hope that the speech wasn't too grandiloquent, nor posterous, but rather effulgent and vivacious, and as it left you elated and buoyant. And our final metric for the evening, such as said.
Yeah. Just before I begin, I would like to give a trigger warning for my speech. It does involve the really sensitive topic of suicide, so if anyone would like to get up now and step outside, I completely understand. They teach us how to write a lot in school. Essays, blogs, speeches, emails, but they never teach you how to write a suicide note. I mean, understandably, right? You don't help a murderer pull the trigger. Suicide. an escape from a situation that seemed impossible to deal with or get relief from. Well, why didn't they ask for help? Help. 4 letters, a singular syllable, and a word that leaves me speechless. And to help, I present to you the 5 stages of asking for help: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. Denial is a common defense mechanism that buffers the immediate shock of loss, numbing us to our emotions. However, in our case, it's the refusal of believing you need or even deserve help. Anger is an intense emotion that is deflected from our vulnerable core, and it's redirected as anger. Anger is something I pair up with frustration, the inability to express how I feel without breaking down simply becomes my reality. Bargaining. It's the reaction to feelings of helplessness and vulnerability. It's often a need to regain control, and we do so through a series of if-only statements. If only someone cared. If only they knew how bad it really was. Depression. Once the denial subsides, and the reality that bargaining might not have gotten the result you hoped for, the struggling person turns to depression, the silent killer. It takes without sympathy, without warning, and without punishment. Depression is one of the most prominent mental illnesses in the world, and it's simply defined as an extensive and severe and staunch feeling of sadness. But it is so much more than that. Depression doesn't care about your socioeconomic class, your gender, your race, your age. It just takes. And it brings me onto the final stage, acceptance. It's not that we no longer feel the pain, because I can tell you, here is probably where you'll feel it in its most intense form. But you aren't resisting your reality. You aren't trying to make it something different. Acceptance taught me that there are so many people struggling. And if we aren't going to be here for each other, who's going to be here for us? And I understand if I'm not the person you're going to run to after this competition and tell me your life stories. So I offer you this. 0800 456 765. That is South Africa's suicide hotline. Please, give them a call. I know it's hard, but please, go through the 5 stages of asking for help before a family member has to go through the 5 stages of grief. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much to our matric participants. Unfortunately, they do have prelims, so we are saying goodnight to them, and they will watch the rest of this online. But thank you so much for participating and giving up of your time. I know that it is exceptionally, exceptionally difficult, and really, it is so, so greatly appreciated. Good luck for tomorrow, guys. welcome our first grade 10 speaker, Ariane Kirknall.
I am a 15-year-old girl with a brain, a nose, 2 eyes, 2 ears and a mouth, and I am 150 centimeters tall. What makes me different from most other 15-year-old girls? It's not that I have a brain, nor that I have 2 eyes. It's that on average, most 15-year-old girls are 160 centimeters, and I'm 10 centimeters less than the average height. But does that determine who I am? Tell me how to live my life? Or stop me from living my life the way I want to? Well, if that was the case, would Zelda May Rubinstein be as successful and as famous as she was? No. Zelda May Rubinstein was born on May 28, 1933, and died on January 27, 2010. But Zelda wasn't like most children. She was at a very young age diagnosed with a deficiency of her anterior pituitary gland, which meant for the rest of her entire life, she would be a dwarf. And not only that, her parents were disgusted with Zelda being a dwarf and put her up for adoption at the age of only 4 years old. Fortunately for Zelda, she was adopted by 2 parents from Poland named Dolores and George Rubinstein, and they announced on the news later on that from the moment they laid eyes on her, they knew she was special. But Zelda was more than special. Zelda would soon become one of the most famous people in the world. She studied acting at the University of California. Poltergeist was her first major film role, and after shooting in the film, she continued acting for another 10 years straight, hitting in many big hit films such as Over and Cages. She realized, though, that there was more to life than acting, and became aware of the problem of HIV/AIDS, and joined in the fight against it in 1984. And in no time, Zelda became a human rights activist and an actress. Zelda truly was an amazing role model and didn't let her heart get in her way. She may have been small, but she definitely had it all. And that motivates me to strive for what I want and not let being small bring me down. Because if you think for a moment that being small isn't as good or not as powerful, you haven't spent a night with a mosquito. And as the famous writer Dante once said, a mighty flame grows from a tiny spark.
Today has been quite an evening, so I thought that as public service, I would have a go at shaking your most fundamental beliefs. And so, my hot take for this evening: outreach is selfish. And an even hotter take: by the end of my speech, not one of you will disagree. Let us start by breaking down my bold statement, and believe me when I say I am not intending to preach to you on capitalism and self-reliance. I'm more on the socialist side myself. Don't you worry, Dad, you didn't create a monster. You just might give me up for adoption by the end of the speech. Maimonides states that we must know that the universe in its entirety is nothing else but one individual being. Personally, Maimonides' quotes always seem fitting, especially this one, that is reasonably appropriate in every context. And what greater way is there to explain a Jewish saying by proposing another Jewish saying? The Rabbi of Kotsk once said, "If I am I, because I am I, and you are you, because you are you, then I am not I, and you are not you. But if I am I, because you are you, and you are you, because I am I, then you are not you, and I am not I." I'll give you a moment. Are we not entirely shaped by our encounters with others? I believe both quotes explain the same idea. We, as human beings, are essentially one. Even if we would all like to deny it after the way too much bonding family time during lockdown, we are one because our own existence shaped the existence of others. And so, I am not I, and you're not you, but instead, a we. If one individual being is removed, the universe in its entirety will change in the manner of a butterfly effect. Every moment in that individual life will fundamentally change, impacting other individual beings, one after the other. I know that we all had enough of COVID speeches, but is a global pandemic not the most excellent proof that we are one? Stop using grand terms like learning loss and GDP, and look at your hands. Yes, you heard me correctly. Have a look. Are they not extremely dehydrated and filled with semi-paper cuts that were in there 2 winters ago, regardless of the hand cream you applied quickly before I started? The fact that we are all in desperate need of a medicare can be definitely credited to the non-stop applying of hand sanitizer. Now take another swift look at the hands of the person sitting next to you. If they are not as dehydrated as yours, Madam Adjudicator, I urge you to drop me a symbol. So, after we spoke about my very bold statement, Maimonides, the Rabbi of Kotsk, and hand cream, let me pose a question. How can we allow ourselves to harm others? Furthermore, and even more importantly, how can we let ourselves not do everything in our power to help, better, and benefit others when we are essentially helping ourselves? Thank you.
Hunger Games. Throughout history, people who have controlled the supply of food and water have used it to achieve their political goals. Individuals have also utilized food to make powerful statements in the Hunger Games of life. Mahatma Gandhi was a master at using hunger strikes to create awareness of his political causes. On one famous occasion, he didn't eat for 21 days to protest the British rule of India. He was willing to give up something as essential as food in order to protest against the plight of the poorest people in the caste system in India. He said, "There are people in the world so hungry that God cannot appear to them, except in the form of bread." How Gandhi managed to go 3 weeks without food baffles me, as I get ravenous in the car ride to school minutes after eating breakfast. For some, hunger is not a game. In countries like Syria, people are dying every day of starvation. To them, hunger is not a choice. In South Africa, a third of our population is unemployed, and most families don't even have one meal a day. If mass unemployment continues, more and more people will be stepping up to the Hunger Games starting line. I come from a traditional Jewish family. Many of our festivals are celebrated by eating delicious foods. In fact, my family often joke at these occasions and sum it up with, "We were in danger, we survived, let's eat." While most Jewish festivals are centered around nourishing both our bodies and souls, there are 2 days a year when we really struggle. These are the 25-hour fast days, Tisha B'Av and Yom Kippur, when hunger becomes the center of my existence. While these days of intense hunger are very difficult for me, I appreciate their significance and importance in Jewish culture. Hunger has been one of the most effective tools used to make powerful political and social statements. A heartbreaking image of a hungry child has often caused the world to become involved in a conflict which otherwise would have gone unnoticed. Knowing how to play the hunger game has perhaps changed the course of history more effectively than bullets and guns.
Next up is Ellen Moffat.
Biologically, humans should not exist. We are simply weaker than most other natural species. Our immune systems vary so largely from human to human that some humans can't even eat nuts or milk without enduring a severe allergic reaction. So what is it about humans that has allowed us to survive thousands and thousands of years of immense pressure? What is it that makes humans so resilient? This exact question has been puzzled over by biologists, anthropologists, behavioral psychologists, and your average high school student. And I think I've found the answer. What makes us so resilient is our ability to copy one another, to learn from each other like no other species can. We have the ability to retain information just by looking at what others are doing and repeating. It is human nature to watch what others are doing and to copy. When I heard of this idea that humans have survived by copying, I was immediately brought back to nursery school, one of my favorite life experiences so far. The time was approximately 10:36. All the students were piling back into their classrooms, and I was ready to join them. All of a sudden, my best friend leaned over to me and said, "Eden, I'm not going to class. Stay at playtime with me." So, of course, I did. And so the next thing you know, 5-year-old me was banking before she even knew what banking was. And strangely enough, my experience is not unique. Many children learn to copy their friends as well. This behavior continues in high school and adult life and presents itself in the workplace, social situations, and more. Who would have thought that the simple, seemingly irrelevant sect of human nature could be so impactful on the evolution of humans today? Without the skill of mimicking, humans would never have advanced the scientific and mathematical abilities we have today. We wouldn't even know how to read and write. Without the abilities to copy, we wouldn't be able to be who we are today. So next time you find yourself copying other people, I want you to think back to 5-year-old me and ask yourself, am I a result of human evolution? Thank you.
Next up, Yael Griffin.
Tonight, I will be talking about a series that has defined multiple generations. A series that has been watched over 100 billion times across all platforms, aired in over 220 countries, and translated into 18 different languages. A show that is so loved that when wanted to be removed off Netflix, viewers rallied as one and watched the show all over again. A show that has launched the biggest debate in history. Tell me, what do you think? Were Ross and Rachel really on a break? In order to explore this question, we need to get a bit of background information. Friends is a hit sitcom that follows the lives of six 20-something-year-old pals as they navigate their lives in 1990s Manhattan. Friends is recognized worldwide and ran for 10 seasons from 1994 to 2004. It all started when 3 producers came together to make a show about 6 friends with no main character. It was later admitted that the characters were all inspired by the producers' own friends and their life stories. Some of the characters were even created with specific actors in mind, particularly Ross Geller. The producers saw David Schwimmer audition for another show and could not get him out of their heads when creating Ross. It was months before they cast the rest of the group. Rachel was the last character to be cast. Jennifer Aniston, who portrayed Rachel on the show, was already signed onto a different series when she got the call. It was a real problem because she had already appeared many times on this other show. The director of the show said to her when she wanted to leave, "You are making a big mistake. This other show, Friends, it will never make you a star. Our show will." He was wrong. There's no better way to say it that when once Friends hit the screens, it exploded. The theme song became a hit on every radio station. The actors were on the cover of every magazine, and they even featured on a Rolling Stones album. Watching a comedy show has been scientifically proven to improve one's quality of life. Watching characters in a show going through real issues make one's own issues more approachable and help you deal with them in a better way. We were there through Ross's 3 divorces. We learned about Hanukkah with the holiday armadillo. We sang Smelly Cat with Phoebe. We watched Joey develop his catchphrase, "How you doing?" And we all saw Ross read Rachel's letter, 18 pages, front and back. According to Google, taking a break means that you have not officially broken up, but you are taking some time off from each other. Whatever that meant to Ross and Rachel, I guess we'll never know. But most of the cast says yes, they were on a break. Friends has touched the lives of millions, and it has pulled people out of their darkest moments. Friends really becomes your friends when you need them. For me, Friends is a time when I can just laugh and turn on the TV and forget all my problems. So remember, when it hasn't been your day, your week, your month, or even your year, Friends will be there for you. And if you don't like Friends,
Next up, Ruby Dussel.
Silence. My silence could mean many things. Perhaps you thought that I had forgotten my words, or was suffering from stage fright. Maybe you thought that my speech had come to an end, and I was waiting for applause. Some of you might have thought that I was waiting for you to be silent. Afghanistan is undergoing a humanitarian crisis. Women's independence and rights are being silenced. In some areas of Afghanistan, they recently fell to the Taliban in recent weeks. Many journalists employed by state TV that were female, now under Taliban control, were stopped from going to work. For days Joe Biden was silent, and so the rest of the world followed. Besides the destructive silence that I've mentioned, silence also has many positive qualities. Take, for example, the religious Hasidic community of Judaism, where the sons of the great leaders and tzaddiks are brought up in silence, and are taught to listen to the silent crying of the world. This theory is based on a passage from the Talmud that states, "A word is worth one coin. Silence is worth two." To me, the most important quality of silence is its power to communicate. After all, actions do speak louder than words. If I were to stand here, shoulders hunched, arms folded, looking at the floor, I would be silently telling you that I was disinterested. My arguments wouldn't be convincing, and you would question my honesty. One of my favorite silences is the peace that I experience when I press the snooze button on my alarm clock at 6 in the morning, giving me an extra 10 minutes of sleep. Ladies and gentlemen, when you lie in bed later this evening, I urge you to listen to the silence. Whether it's awkward, forced, filled with suspense or communication, it is always meaningful. And now, it is my turn for silence, as my speech comes to an end. As Burke Edmonds wrote more than 400 years ago, a speech is an event upon which it is difficult to speak, but impossible to be silent.
Life and time are the two best teachers. Life teaches us to make good use of time, and time teaches us the value of life. I've chosen to speak about time in the form of an hourglass. Time is intangible. You cannot touch it, taste it, hear it, or see it. Time, however, is priceless, and it is only once it is taken from us that we realize its true value. Ever since humans first noticed the regular movement of the sun and the stars, we have wondered about the passage of time. Prehistoric people first recorded the phases of the moon 30,000 years ago, and recording time has been a way by which humanity has observed the heavens and represented the progress of civilization. An hourglass was given to my dad by very close family friends. It was a gift to symbolize their many years of friendship. It sat on a shelf in my dad's bar and was very special to him. I loved playing with it when I was younger. I stared at it for long periods of time, mesmerized by the falling sand. The hourglass was one of the earliest timekeeping devices, before it became the symbol for a program installing on your computer screens. It was known as the representation of mortality. Time may be infinite, but human life is not. As a little girl, I imagined my dad walking me down the aisle on my wedding day. He would look into my eyes and tell me how proud he was of me and that he loved me. He would give me a kiss on my cheek. My dad was tragically taken from me when I was 8 years old, and my reality has shifted. So too has the understanding of the fleeting nature of time and life. I view time differently now. I appreciate its value and realize to have an abundance of time is to be truly wealthy. I've learned to not get caught up in the petty trivialities of life. Time has a wonderful way of weeding these out. Every second is a moment in time, and once gone, can never be retrieved. I've learned to savor these moments, whether good or bad. Every moment with my family, my friends, doing what I love is invaluable. Life is unplanned. We cannot control what is coming next. I want to know that when my time is up, I have no excuses, no opportunities gone to waste, no regrets. My mission in life is not to merely survive, but to thrive, to do everything wholeheartedly and with true passion. Today I've spoken to you about an hourglass, but I hope the real message I've left with you is to not simply let the hours pass by, but rather to embrace it. Embrace life and all it offers. Live every moment. Love every memory. Because one may delay, but time will not.
Right, and on to our grade 11s. Our first speaker is Eddie.
Yeah. It's been a rough year dealing with lockdowns and COVID. The best way to bide our time has been to sit back with some popcorn in hand and watch Netflix. I'm sure many of you have come across movies about autism, such as The Good Doctor and The Accountant. The real meaning about what autism is has been distorted. These movies are not a true depiction of what autism is. It makes people think that most individuals with autism are brilliant and gifted. The fact is that a very small percentage of these children fall into this category. For the most part, I've seen many children debilitated, trapped, unable to communicate, with obsessions and repetitive behaviors that interrupt their functionality. The time has come for autism to be redefined. The matter has become complicated by the DSM-5, the diagnostic manual which defines autism. This has resulted in healthcare professionals not being able to get a proper understanding of a population that varies so greatly in its presentation. Without a clear distinction of various parts of the spectrum, we are comparing apples and oranges. It has become more urgent than ever to call for a split of the spectrum. I read many books about autism. My favorite book is by Dr. Brian Jepson, who wrote Changing the Course of Autism. He explains the medical complexities of autism when he says that autism is merely one symptom of an underlying disease process that affects the immunological system, the gastrointestinal system, the toxicological system, as well as the neurological system. Based on current research, we can now see that autism is not a psychiatric condition requiring psychiatric medication. It is possible to restore health and functionality through treating these underlying causes. The concept of neurodiversity has become very widespread on social media, and in my opinion, it is the biggest threat to the development and enhancement of autism treatment. Neurodiversity propagates for the acceptance of autism. For my family, this idea is ludicrous, as we will never accept my brother David's autism. Autism is a very debilitating illness. 40% of children with autism are nonverbal. Why would any parent sit back and accept this? If David could communicate beyond basic needs, I believe that he'd tell us that for him, autism is not a superpower. I see how he picks his skin in frustration until he bleeds as a result of his uncertainty about what's happening next. I feel his frustration when he can't make himself understood. I sense his fear and confusion before he is about to have a seizure and cannot tell us. I'm aware of and appreciate all the things that I could do easily that David is unable to do. He's taught me to be responsible and to not take anything for granted. I still hold on to the hope that David will continue to recover from autism. The imminent Jewish New Year is the anniversary of the creation of Adam and Eve. Autism has taught me that God left a part of the world imperfect for us to have a hand in creation. It is for this reason that I share my views with everyone in the hope that perceptions and biases will change.
Our next speaker is Lena.
Picture the scene. A young girl sitting in a classroom. She is physically present, but emotionally, she finds herself trapped in a terrifying world of isolated fear. She feels panicked, dizzy, out of breath. Yet, when she looks around, everyone seems completely relaxed. No matter what she tries, she cannot control herself. She is having a panic attack. This girl was, and still is, me. When I had my first panic attack, I didn't attribute the symptoms to anxiety. That's because they didn't feel like anxiety. They felt like a heart attack, a life-threatening allergic reaction. Basically, just imminent death. I continued experiencing panic attacks, always at times that felt arbitrary and safe, like chatting to my friends at break, walking to class, or even just sitting in assembly. I suffer from generalized anxiety disorder, and this often manifests through immobilizing panic attacks. During the pandemic, I found that I'm not alone in my plight. I'm surrounded by people who experience similar states of panic. And, for the first time, I feel like my disorder has made me normal. I'm no longer an isolated case. Many people I've spoken to feel what I've been feeling for most of my teenage years. So, is anxiety amongst the youth about to become the next pandemic? According to the National Institutes of Health, nearly 1 in 3 of all adolescents ages 13 to 18 will experience an anxiety disorder. That means today's youth are much more prone to anxiety than previous generations. But why? Unfortunately, we can't blame it all on the COVID-19 pandemic. Instead, it is evident that Generation Z is experiencing added pressure during their teenage years, and this is largely due to the spread of technology and social media. Nevertheless, we seem to be overlooking the very real issue of how social media is affecting the youth. Not only does social media impact our self-esteem by forcing us to compare our lives and social connections to what we see on other people's posts, it also causes serious anxiety when we find ourselves wasting hours and hours on different online platforms. In other words, social media is eating away at our lives. Between standardized testing and a culture of achievement, today's youth feel pressure to succeed in ways previous generations did not. A survey done every year by Higher Education Research asks incoming university students if they feel overwhelmed by all they have to do. In 1985, 18% said yes. In 2019, that number rose to 41%. Along with social media, issues such as climate change and political instability have made the world an increasingly scary and challenging place, and teens are ill-equipped to deal with their rising levels of anxiety. This rapid increase in anxiety and depression in children and adolescents is alarming and requires immediate attention. Otherwise, anxiety really will become the next global pandemic.
Our constant need to check social media isn't only worsening our eye prescription, it's also distorting our perception. I'm sorry to be the bearer of bad news, but no, her skin isn't that clear, and unfortunately, his abs are photoshopped too. The average person wakes up and checks their phone before even brushing their teeth, and then continues to check it about 150 times that day. It seems impossible to believe that a few years ago, these devices weren't even invented. Now, don't get me wrong, social media has potential to truly spread positivity. There are tons of accounts that are educational and help contribute to society. Phones are vital for communication, and life without mine would be absolute hell. Or would it? Maybe I'd be better off without seeing hundreds of adverts for weight loss herbs and waist shapers. Maybe I'd have more time to pursue a new hobby if it wasn't for the hours spent scrolling on TikTok. And maybe, just maybe, I'd be a more confident person if it wasn't for the brutality of the internet trolls. During lockdown, I was scrolling through Netflix when I came across a documentary called The Social Dilemma. While watching this, I wanted to delete every single app because I was nothing but appalled. Ex-workers from Pinterest and Twitter spoke about the ins and outs of their former companies, how they track and control everything we see and send. These employees left the multi-million-dollar companies because of the unethical strategies that they performed in order to make us hooked and wanting more. It's also distorted our sense of reality. Even though Karen's cruise to the Bahamas looks spectacular, her life is far from perfect, because no one's is. Social media hasn't only made us envious and shallow people, but the art of conversing face-to-face has been lost. As a teenager, I'd love to live in the 1960s. If I wanted to make a move, I'd walk straight to Danny Zuko's house and knock on the door. But in today's time, hey, what? JCNU is the new love language. So, dear Mr. Zuckerberg, even though I can barely conceptualize your net worth, I think creating desalination plants or solving world poverty is a more worthwhile venture than a new Facebook update.
Next up, we have Ben Glass.
Humankind, in some form or another, has been living on this rock we've come to call Earth for around 4 million years. In this context of time, it is simply a blink of an eye, as the rock itself is a whole lot older, emerging 4.5 billion years ago from an enormous void of nothingness. After many years of evolving, we are finally experiencing the age of abundance. In all our recorded history, this is the best of times, measured by the fact that there are better living conditions, modern medicine, and an embrace of science, which has propelled technological advancements forward, like the incredible thrust of the Falcon 9 rocket, tearing itself free from the Earth's gravitational force. But I'm filled with so much doubt and insecurity. In a world with so much advancement, all it took was a virus that is too minute for the naked eye to force us into pajamas and a dreaded state of online learning. It is so easy to feel that we are delicately balancing on a cliff that returns all humans to nothingness. As a species, we have not been able to develop fast enough to deal and cope with the complexity of change. Maybe that is why each generation longs for the good old days. My parents grew up without a mobile phone. My grandparents witnessed the first people in space, captured in black and white. And my great-grandparents emerged from a world war and used a horse and cart to zip around. While science continues to teach us the how of the world, we still search for the why. If it is all so fleeting, if nothing lasts forever, let alone humanity, then what is the reason for our being? It is a pretty irritating thought that even if we were to finally discover the meaning of life, which is not actually 42, someone would probably come along and change it anyway. While the world is rapidly changing, we still have to be cognizant of where we came from. South Africa has some of the most beautiful examples of rock art etched into eternity and left to us as a gift by the San people. At the Robberg Nature Reserve, a World Heritage Site and my favorite hiking trail, the art of people and animals has been left for thousands of years. If you were able to lightly glide your fingers over the art of the paintings of people and animals, then you would hear the story told by these sand people, left for future generations. With the passing of time, we simply don't know why past generations went through such effort to lug around giant rocks or leave markings of people on walls. But I imagine it's because each generation has come to understand that they are a link in the chain of humanity. While we may not last forever, we do have an obligation to those who came before us to write our own chapter, sentence, or even just the next letter in the book of humanity, so that the generations who follow us are able to stand on our shoulders and achieve what is seemingly impossible. If all good things like holidays and humanity must come to an end, and even if you do not believe in the afterlife, it's probably worth following Woody Allen's advice and take along a change of underwear.
That's the exact statement.
Small shacks. As I drive by, I see tiny, trashed, tattered shacks. Crying dogs. I hear ravenous mutts wailing for an overdue meal. Excrement. I smell raw sewage left to rot because of poorly planned plumbing systems. Shivers. I feel shivers down my spine. I feel my hair stand on end as I momentarily imagine a life of poverty. Poverty is the state of not having enough material possession or income for a person's basic needs. This definition diminishes the meaning of poverty. This definition disregards the rarely available food and water. This definition disregards the borderline unachievable education due to overcrowding and understaffed schools. This definition diminishes the life of a poverty-stricken victim. In South Africa, upwards of 55% of the population is living below the poverty line. Upwards of 30 million people are living with a wage that is lower than what their own government deems necessary to live. I think this is the main problem with poverty and its perception. When you search poverty in South Africa, you don't see how some people actually live. You don't see how little food or water they have access to. You don't see the difficulties and hardships they experience on a daily basis. You see a number, a statistic. In townships, most households don't even have access to public toilets. Imagine you're living your entire life having to share public bathrooms with 12,000 residents of your shantytown. Schools in townships are incredibly overcrowded and fail to provide a suitable learning environment for children. Imagine having to walk through the most feared areas of your country, full of thieves and murderers, every single day in order to obtain an education. Imagine having to sit in a classroom full of 100 sick and hungry children, sharing books and stationery in order to obtain an education. But imagination is my only link to the people who lead unimaginably awful lives, as I've never had to experience the atrocities that they go through on a daily basis. And yet, now, as my speech concludes, I continue my day at my private school. I'll go to break, and from my lunchbox, my full lunchbox, I'll eat my food. The food I probably won't even finish. Then school ends, and I get in the car, my mom's new car, and I drive home to my warm, comfortable home. But as we drive, I look out of the window. Small shacks. I see tiny, trashed, tattered shacks.
Next up, Sandy.
Her heart is racing. She's filled with nerves as she wonders if she'll be good enough. She takes a deep breath and begins to play, each swift note after the next, with her bow placed in the perfect position. She drowns out the noise. All she's able to hear is a beautiful melody flowing through the heart of her violin. The audience applauds and cheers as they reward her with the well-deserved standing ovation. This is the wonder child, the child prodigy, loved and admired by all. Only a few years later, she has lost her entire family. She's on the run from the Nazis with her sister by her side. They are forced to leave behind the only home they have ever known. My late great-grandmother, Cecilia Borachowitz, was no longer the adored wonder child, but rather the hated, dangerous, evil Jewish devil trying to escape death. How is it that love can so easily be converted into hate? Hatred is described as the world's most destructive effective phenomenon in the history of human nature. No one is born with hatred. It is a learned process and can be easily taught, as it has a deep connection to fear. Psychologist Bernard Golden explains, acts of hate are attempts to distract oneself from feeling helpless and powerless. You would think that after the Holocaust occurred, humanity would have learned that acts of hatred have beyond terrifying consequences.
Yet the world still witnessed the Rwandan genocide in 1994, where there were over 800,000 innocent people executed. The Tutsi people were targeted for having a different belief. It was an attack based on xenophobia, racism, and intolerance of the other. Esther Mujawayo, a Tutsi survivor, explained, "It was one of the darkest chapters of hatred in recent human history, and almost impossible to survive. Most of the survivors were broken in their bodies and their souls." Are we just going to let history continue to repeat itself over and over again? On the 6th of January 2021, the hideous monster called hatred reared its disastrous head yet again. The United States Capitol was stormed by protesters whose goal was to inflict violence. If it was not enough for these maniacs to demonstrate an attack of terror, they chose to wear merchandise stating that 6 million was not enough. I was absolutely horrified by this blatant display of anti-Semitism and hatred. Have we as a society learned nothing from the mistakes of the past? It is time for us to crush this monster, as hatred only breeds hatred. My late great-grandmother was able to choose love and tolerance even after the hell that she had been through in order to survive. She taught me that choosing to love in every situation is the only way to bring peace and light throughout the world. Maya Angelou once said, "Hate, it has caused a lot of problems in this world, but has not solved one yet." If I were to speak about all the atrocities caused by hatred, we would be here forever. It is up to us to end this vicious cycle.
The philosophical poet and author, Joyce Bell, once stated, "When I was young, everything in the world fell into being wrong or right, black or white. Now that I'm older, I know that some things fall into wrong and some things fall into right. Some things are categorized as black and some things white, but most things in the world are neither. Most things aren't black, aren't white, aren't wrong or right. Most of everything just is." When I first heard the term black and white thinking, I immediately thought no enthusiasm, boring, lack of colour and dull. But there's actually a medical term, splitting, which refers to black and white thinking, which is completely different to what I originally thought. Splitting, also known as dichotomous or polarized thinking, is a thought pattern that makes people think in absolutes. For instance, you may think you're either always right or the world's biggest failure. Psychologists consider this thought pattern to be a cognitive distortion because it keeps people from seeing life the way it really is, complex, uncertain, and constantly changing. Black and white thinking doesn't allow you to find the middle ground. Finding the middle ground and thinking with some more grays is important in all aspects of life. Thinking between the black and white, you display a sense of maturity and understanding when it comes to topics up for discussion. It is also stress relieving, as people are able to view life the way it really works, with ups, downs, and nothing set in stone. The grey scale is quite boring. Let's add some colour to the way we think, because if people only thought in black and white, we as a human race would not be evolving. During the space race, John F. Kennedy challenged the American inventors to build a spaceship that would send the first man to the moon. Sending a man to the moon was considered impossible before 1969. And although my grandparents watched the moon landing in black and white, This is completely out the box and on the colour wheel thinking. Who knows, with more colourful thinking, we may even hit the red planet. I believe all children are born creative. When a child looks at a tree, they see many different colours and shades, but from a young age we are taught that a tree is green and brown, and from then on that is how we look at one. If we're able to use our creativity and go back to looking at trees like we did as children, if we weren't bound by the idea that a tree can only be two colours, there is no limit to what we as humans can accomplish. Coming back to C. Joe Belsey and the idea that most things in the world are neither black nor white, I believe everything we know today is due to someone thinking in colour and out the box. Our evolution as society is a result of people thinking between the blacks, whites and greys, when they explore what colour really is.
Right, next up, Annalisa.
We're at the start of a race, the starting gun, ready to fire. Suddenly, the race official announces, "Take a step forward if you have clean, running water, and another if you have or are getting an education, and another if you have a warm house and a bed to sleep in." The official keeps announcing, if you have 3 meals a day, if you have warm clothes and comfortable shoes. After each announcement, another step is taken. When the official finishes, the group is no longer all starting behind the starting line. Rather, they are scattered, some far ahead, while others glued behind the starting line. Where would I be standing in this race? Where would you be standing in this race? The participants were told to look around and judge how fair this race would be. Nearly everyone agreed it was simply not fair. Privilege. The race of life does not start behind a starting line. We all start at different points and have different advantages over one another. Just because someone is starting further behind does not mean they're going to lose, but the chance of them succeeding over someone much closer to the finish line is questionable. Privilege is hard to notice when everything is going your way, but when you have the short end of the stick, privilege is more visible. Very few people would notice their privilege and complain about having an advantage over someone else. Learning about privilege isn't enough. Recognizing the advantages you have over others just by being born isn't enough. We need to use our gifts to benefit others. A class of students were told to throw a crumpled piece of paper into a dustbin at the front of the class. The class had 5 rows going backwards. All the students at the back of the class, furthest from the dustbin, shouted in protest that this competition was simply not fair. Yet the students closest to the front said nothing. Imagine a world where we didn't use our privilege for selfish reasons, but rather we helped those behind us finish the race or helped our classmates get the crumpled piece of paper into the dustbin. Privilege is all about realizing that you have an advantage over others and helping them. We don't realize the power of our own voice. Instead of feeling bad about your advantages and contemplating why you were one of the lucky few, notice your privilege. Use your voice and stand up for the voiceless.
Next up, we have Lee Appleton.
Why is it important for research to be morally ethical? Research ethics supports and upholds social and moral values, such as the principle of doing no harm to another. They are put in place so that people can trust the research done. There was a study done by Peter Neuenbauer, a psychiatrist and head of the Child Development Center in New York, who had an idea that he believed would illuminate the great debate over what made humans the way they were: their genes or the environment in which they grew up in. So he proposed an idea to study identical twins and triplets. One of the studies done on triplets, Eddie, Robert, and David, who were placed in different family homes and studied for purpose of the research project. The parents, however, these adopted parents were not told of the study done and nor of the siblings that these children had. Through the now closed Louise Wise Adoption Agency, an unknown number of twins and triplets were separated at birth and secretly observed for years by researchers who diligently made home visits. Parents were told that these visits were standard to track the adopted children's progress. The study ran from the 12th of July 1961, from when the triplets were born, up until the rest of their childhood. After seeing this documentary, my question is, why was this unethical research experiment allowed in the first place, and why was it allowed to continue up until when it was discovered? The most important ethical violation in this case involves the lack of informed consent from the individuals and the families studied. It was just one of the many unethical studies in the 1950s and 60s that used subjects as a means to an end. In the mid-19th century, French scientist Claude Bernard placed a ban on unethical research, where no experiment was allowed that would harm a single individual, even if the result was highly beneficial to scientific study or the health of others. However, despite this ban, the next century was filled with unethical research experiments that put orphans, prisoners, and other minorities at risk. Then, in 1947, after the war, a post-war tribunal issued the Nuremberg Code, designed to prevent future unethical research. Its first rule read, "The voluntary consent of the human subject is essential," but top-notch researchers from American prestigious medical schools went away anyways. Being a twin myself, I found this project horrific and cruel, as to deprive the children of the siblings' love for one another leads to so many issues down the line, like mental illnesses. Personally, I resonate with the study on a deeper level. When I think of the effects it had on these individuals' lives later on, I truly empathize with them and feel the anger of how they were treated. So yes, let's learn about the unethical experiment that foolishly separated triplets at birth and damaged them as a result. But let's also keep in mind why future historians may look at us today and ask, how could they let that happen?
Next speaker, Joy.
Would you just mind if I say a few things before I start speaking? Is this right?
Yeah.
I would just like to dedicate the speech to the brave men and women standing in Afghanistan. They've lost their lives, it has been reported a few minutes ago. Many women and children have been killed due to a suicide bombing by a coward terrorist, and I shame their senseless actions. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, defend, protect, and uphold the Constitution. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. The world heard these words on February 20th, 2016. The world has changed forever since this point. Hundreds of millions of people around the world were sick to the stomach that Donald Trump was now the leader of the free world. Some feared a nuclear warfare, but individuals like myself were optimistic and happy for what the future would hold. Good day, fellow speakers, and Trump supporters, of course. Donald Trump was born on the 14th of June, 1946 in New York. As a young business tycoon, he always said his dream was to become the President of the United States. But with Donald Trump, there is no such thing as a dream. He makes it a reality. Trump was discussed as a potential candidate for president in almost every election since 1988. In fact, he was rated in the top 10 most influential men of 2011. Trump's first speech as a candidate outlined domestic issues such as illegal immigration, American jobs, the US national debt, and of course, Islamic terrorism. To be honest, ladies and gentlemen, when I was writing the speech today, I was going to write it on the devastating scenes we are seeing in Afghanistan, and to talk about the horrific failures that the Biden administration has made. America has been embarrassed on the world stage. But I thought it was correct and appropriate for me to remind you of the leader we need, the leader the world requires at this moment, Donald Trump. Trump's first presidential visit was to the state of Israel, our home. He has always been a massive supporter of Benjamin Netanyahu and Naftali Bennett, the current Israeli Prime Minister. I believe he was the most pro-Israel president the United States has ever seen. America had recognized Jerusalem as the capital of our home. He had given Israel sovereignty over the Golan Heights. He had withdrew from the one-sided biased ICC. He had advised his ambassador to stand up for Israel at the United Nations no matter what cost this would bring to America and their allies in NATO. He has applied crippling sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran, which publicly calls for destruction of my home, Israel. He is the first president in decades to create peace between the Israel and Arab nations. Israel and Arab nations have potential to create peace. Arabs and Jews are very similar, and this relationship has so far created hundreds of billions of dollars in trade. Israelis can now go enjoy the beautiful sights in the Dubai, Bahrain, as well as many other Arab countries. And Arabs can go enjoy holy sites in Israel, including mosques, the Western Wall, and see that Israel is not an apartheid state. His sanctions on the Islamic Republic of Iran were seen as a miracle in the eyes of Israel, Saudi Arabia, United Arab Nations, and many more states. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said he would never let Iran get nuclear weapons. These sanctions on Iran drastically reduced their capabilities of obtaining these deadly nuclear weapons that could cause mass destruction to our home, the State of Israel. He has also helped the Jewish state fight the terrorist organizations such as Hezbollah, Hamas, the ISIS Caliphate, and many more terrorist organizations. On January 2nd, 2019, Trump did the most heroic and brave thing I've ever witnessed a president do. He killed the most evil and satanic man to ever step the planet, Qasem Soleimani. He was the leader of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and in charge of the terrorist network that spanned across the Middle East. He stopped terrorism. If Trump was in power, Afghanistan would be a completely different scene. Trump's response to develop a COVID vaccine was done in record time. He named it Operation Warp Speed. No one believed it was possible. His chief scientist, Dr. Anthony Fauci, even doubted him. But once again, President Donald Trump made it possible. He did it. Pfizer applied for emergency authorization on December 11th, 2020, just 9 months before they started developing the vaccine. They publicly acknowledged Donald Trump helped this process and dramatically speeded it up by giving billions of dollars in federal money and help with the most heroic and brave scientist America has. In conclusion, I would like to say, I know he is not the most perfect man. I know he has faults, and many of you don't like him, but recognize the good that he has done for the world. Don't ignore what he did for you as a Jew, what he did for you as a Zionist, and what he did for the world at large. Thank you.
Next up, we have Sherry Kaplan.
A tall, dark-haired, 9-year-old girl stands in the center of the concourse competition stage. Wearing a sparkly purple leotard and a beaming smile, she's ready to begin her modern dance routine. She twirls across the stage effortlessly and concludes her routine with outstretched jazz hands and a sense of fulfillment as she relishes the crowd's applause. When her name is called out in the same sentence as A and first place, she realizes she has attained her goal. This successful young dancer is none other than my best friend, Maya. I sit in the audience with a feeling of impending doom, knowing my competition is in just 3 weeks from now, and unlike Maya, I lack the skill and talent to even come close to excelling. In fact, I question why I am even competing. Standing outside the hall, I overhear my dancing teacher telling my mother, clipped, unkind, harsh words. Shiri will not be able to compete. She is not ready, and no amount of practice will change this. Now, I have never been particularly ambitious when it comes to dancing. It's always been treated as a fun extra with no means of excelling. I should be overjoyed with this easy way out of the dreaded competition. However, my stubbornness can be eternally relied on to trump any sense of lack of motivation. And for the first time in my life, I will compete and I will succeed. Psychology coach Katerina Lino reminds us that willpower is used to exercise, diet, save money, and ultimately accomplish any of our goals. It impacts almost every area of our life and is needed to do anything. She quotes spiritual leader Mahatma Gandhi, saying, "Strength does not come from physical ability, but rather it comes from one's inner willpower." So, for the next 3 weeks, music is played on loop every morning before school and every afternoon until bedtime, as I practice each and every step as if my life depends on it. Then, the tall, dark-haired young girl in a sparkly purple leotard with a beaming smile in the center of the stage is me. I dance with exuberance and enthusiasm, and I end my routine with outstretched jazz hands, and now I'm feeling fulfilled to hear the audience's applause. I'm only fully satisfied when I hear my name in the same sentence as the symbol A. I did it. Not because I'm a good dancer, but because I am not. I'm an unstoppable force of sheer willpower, self-belief, and I powered the success with my own mind. My dancing career ended shortly after this highlight or ordeal. Depends on how I choose to spin my narrative. That special day, which shines out in the recesses of my mind, birthed a catchphrase in my family.
the Shiri factor. This term is used to inspire unrealistic goals and to push and motivate an underachieving sibling. This phrase is a call to arms to replicate my 9-year-old sheer willpower, to be better and to better myself, to bet on myself, and to believe in myself, especially when no one else does.
Right, then we are on to our final speaker for the evening, Kiara Miller.
There's one that's on my list that you haven't given.
I'm so sorry.
There is this girl I see quite often. Her hair is the colour of mud, neither curly nor straight. Her eyes are dull brown. She's not very tall, and her lips are way too full. She wishes she had long, straight blonde hair like Hailey Bieber, sparkly blue eyes like Gigi Hadid, and lips as pouty as Kylie Jenner, because that would make her beautiful. When she was little, she thought she was beautiful. She thought she looked just like Princess Belle from Beauty and the Beast. But once she reached grade 8, she no longer saw Princess Belle. Instead, she saw the spot on her left cheek and the bump on her nose. I know this girl well. I see her every day in my bathroom mirror. What is pretty? Is it owning the newest pair of Nike Air Force Ones or posting the perfect picture on Instagram? In a social media experiment, girls were asked whether they believed they were pretty or beautiful. One said, "Well, I guess I think I'm pretty, but I know I'm more cute than beautiful." Another, "I'm pretty, but I know my market value." These girls know, after lifetimes of being shown images of what is pretty, cute, and beautiful, exactly what kind of pretty they are or aren't, and to what degree that prettiness abounds. Just saying they were pretty without acknowledging the exceptions seemed to be like admitting you didn't understand how pretty works. And pretty isn't a permanent statement either. It's a complicated, ever-changing assessment detached with an almost economic appraisal. I'm pretty, but I'm not beautiful. Women compare themselves with an idealized standard of beauty, such as a fashion model. However, when they rate their intelligence, they don't compare themselves to Einstein, but rather to a more normal standard. Even female celebrities don't think they're as beautiful as we think they are. "I'm not very pretty," the actress Anne Hathaway says. "I have very large features on a very small head." If the most beautiful celebrities don't regard themselves as pretty, what then? The Dove Beauty campaign suggests that beauty starts with a girl's mother and then is passed on to them. If the mother uses the self-deprecating phrase, "I feel so fat today," in front of her daughter, it plants a seed of self-doubt that she will spend her entire life struggling to eliminate. I recently learned that Marilyn Monroe, considered to be one of the most beautiful women in the 1950s, had a beauty spot in her cheek in exactly the same place as the girl in my bathroom mirror. So next time I see her in the mirror, we're going to have this conversation. I'm going to tell her that the spot on her left cheek is her trademark. It gives her character. It is beautiful, just as she is beautiful, because she is unique, strong, and intelligent.
odds be ever in your favor. The Hunger Games. How I wish the odds would have been in my favor when entering high school. So far, I've spent about 4 out of my 17 youthful years in the chaotic and crazy world that some call high school, but others may refer to as the Hunger Games. By definition, they are extremely similar. A group of adolescents enclosed in an area and forced to battle. But instead of defeating competitors, we fight through the workload while balancing friends, work, and extramurals. And instead of death, we deal with embarrassing experiences that murder our ego. We have been conscripted into high school and forced to deal with these embarrassing moments that are just as gut-wrenching and painful as the stab of a knife. From my school years, I feel fairly well equipped and definitely experienced enough to advise other students and even parents on how to handle humiliation and awkward encounters in life. I myself have experienced a few disconcerting moments. Just like the speech, being forgotten at a public speaking competition, or losing the inter-high gala for my school. I was just a scrawny grade 8 who was the exact opposite of a fish and probably the worst swimmer on the team when my swimming coach asked me to swim for the most important race for the year. To this day, I'm not sure why I, the girl who still does not know how to dive properly, was chosen for the one race needed to win the most important gala of the year. I accepted the challenge, confused but eager, and I stepped up onto the diving board. What makes the story even sadder was that my matric crush, who so happened to be the best swimmer on the team, was swimming in that race too. And the words he said have been stuck with me ever since. You are going to do great. Just do your best. And the best I was determined to do. Because in my mind, winning this race was a one-way ticket to the matric dance. I'll just be upfront in saying, we came dead last. I've never been to the matric dance. And the school coaches definitely had to find a new Nemo. Research shows that the most embarrassing age is 16. And thank goodness I am now 17. But most parents still feel like they are in the awkward stage of life. There is no escape. So I thought. At my own expense, I have learned the secret to dealing with humiliation, the secret to winning the Hunger Games. What I've learned is that everyone is too busy trying to stay alive in their own Hunger Games that they don't even look at you. We worry about ourselves, not others. Awkward encounters are only terribly embarrassing when you give them the time and attention like I have this evening. Embarrassment is subjective, and we are way too hard on ourselves for just being human. And besides, even if you do get the odd chuckle or two, stand up, take a breath, brush it off, and congratulate yourself for making someone laugh.
We are just going to take a 10-minute interval just so that we can kind of deliberate what is the word? Lost the word. This is what public speaking does, right? Just so that we can deliberate on the results of the evening. Thanks so much. Are we done? We're done.
Every time you come around, you know I can't say no. Every time the sun goes down, I let you take control. I can feel the paradise before my world implodes. And tonight had something wonderful. My bad habits lead to late nights, ending alone. Conversations with a stranger I barely know. Swearing this will be the last, but it probably won't. I got nothing left to lose or use or do. My bad habits lead to white eyes staring into space, and I know I lose control of the things that I say. Yeah, I was looking for a way out, now I can't escape. Nothing happens after 2. It's true, it's true. My bad habits lead to you. My bad habits lead to you. My bad habits lead to you. Every pure intention ends when the good times start. Falling over everything to reach the first time spark. It started under neon lights and then it all got dark. I only know how to go too far. My bad habits lead to late nights, ending alone. Conversations with a stranger I barely know. Swearing this will be the last, but it probably won't. I got nothing left to lose or use or do. My bad habits lead to white eyes staring into space, and I know I lose control of the things that I say. Yeah, I was looking for a way out, now I can't escape. Nothing happens after 2. It's true, it's true. My bad habits lead to you. My bad habits lead to you. We took the long way round and burned till the fun ran out. Now my bad habits lead to late nights, ending alone. Conversations with a stranger I barely know. Swearing this will be the last, but it probably won't. I got nothing left to lose or use or do. My bad habits lead to white eyes staring into space, and I know I lose control of the things that I say. Yeah, I was looking for a way out, now I can't escape. Nothing happens after 2. It's true, it's true. My bad habits lead to you. My bad habits lead to you. My bad habits lead to you.
I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay. I get drunk, wake up, I'm wasted still. I realize the time that I wasted here. I feel like you can't feel the way I feel. I'll be fucked up if you can't be right here. Oh, 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 oh. I'll be fucked up if you can't be right here. I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay. I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay. When I'm away from you, I miss your touch. You're the reason I believe in love. It's been difficult for me to trust, and I'm afraid that I'ma fuck it up. Ain't no way that I can leave you stranded, 'cause you ain't never left me empty-handed. And you know that I can live with if you can't be right here. I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay, yeah. I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay, yeah.
Last night, all I think about is you. Don't stop, baby, you can walk too. Don't want, baby, think about you. You know that I'm never gonna lose.
Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. Heat waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now. Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. Heat waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now. Usually I put something on TV, so we never think about you and me. But today I see our reflections clearly in Hollywood, laying on the screen. You just need a better life than this. You need something I can never give. Fake water all across the road. It's gone now, the night is come. But sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. Heat waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now. You can't fight it, you can't breathe. You say something so loving, but now I gotta let you go. You'll be better off in someone new. I don't wanna be alone. You know it hurts me too. You look so broken when you cry. One more and then I say goodbye. Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. Heat waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now. Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. Heat waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now. I just wonder what you're dreaming of when you sleep and smile so comfortable. I just wish that I could give you that look that's perfectly unsaid. Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. Heat waves been faking me out. Heat waves been faking me out. Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. Heat waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now. Sometimes all I think about is you. Late nights in the middle of June. Heat waves been faking me out. Can't make you happier now.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, and other people. Right, we are going to swiftly move into kind of the results of the evening, and so I call up our adjudicator, Romy Levine.
Good evening, everybody. I can say one thing about this evening to start off, and that is that it truly was a celebration. It was a celebration of public speaking, a celebration of sharing, and just of being together. We've had so few public speaking live events in the last year and a half that it's just so lovely for you to have a real audience. I know that we've had a virtual audience as well, so that's lovely. And I had a question from someone earlier in the evening, should I include the virtual audience in my eye contact? A year and a half ago, we didn't have these kind of problems. So well done for that. I think you all handled yourselves really, really well. And we just had a celebration because there was a vibe and there was a buzz and there was support from every single person for every other person in the audience, whether you were parents, whether you were students, whether you were friends, whether you were just classmates. So I just want to say that I think the parents will agree with what I'm going to say. You had so much that was worthwhile to say, that if this youth is our future and our leaders, I don't think that we have anything to worry about. So I just want to tell you, I think that I have adjudicated some of you in the past, and I can see in the past from where you've come from to where you are, you have all grown so much. There obviously are new speakers tonight, but just the two little things that I want to speak about are, most of you knew your speeches really well, you were well prepared, you connected well with your audience. If there was an over-reliance on cue cards, you sometimes do disconnect from your audience, because if I'm kind of doing this, you're watching my head, and you're actually not necessarily listening to what I say because you're getting quite distracted by that. The other thing is when you are making the eye contact, you've all been told, make eye contact with your audience. You need to make real eye contact with your audience. So this is for the future. Some of you are in grade 10 and 11 and you've still got matric orals and things coming in the future. Connect with the people in the audience. Really look at them when you're making a point. When you're making your next point, include the next area of your audience. Because when you're doing this kind of thing, I call it the hyena look, you're not actually looking at anybody. And again, it's the, I'm watching your head, and it just detracts from what you are saying. The other thing, I know that you are going to get what I wrote, which was just scribbled notes. On some of your reports, I wrote that you need to watch your pausing so that you're not breaking the fluency of what you're saying by breaking your phrasing. So just watch that if I have written that on your report. The technique tonight was superb. Overall, really, such a high standard of work that we saw tonight. What I'm looking for is a balance between research, the what you are saying, and the delivery, the how you are saying it. Also, so the content and the delivery and the research and the personal experience, because the personal is what really connects you with the audience. And some of you shared so beautifully the obstacles that you've overcome, whether it was death of a family member, anxiety. We could all relate to that. So although there are those tick boxes, and I do have those tick boxes because I adjudicate thousands of speeches every year, you all do know that in public speaking there is an element of subjectivity and how you touch your audience. And I found that really interesting. We value your insights, we value your opinions, and I think that overall such accomplished speakers. We started off with the grade 12s, and all I can say is, I don't know if they're watching online, but such a hard act to follow, because all three of them were absolutely superb. I want to give special mentions to, I could have given the winners award 6 times over and even more. But I want to give special mentions to Natalia with her speech on words, superb, lovely humour, to Sasha, who really touched us with her talk on suicide, to Dani, who's just such an accomplished speaker, and her humour and natural and just connects with us, and Tali, also a faultless talk. But I did have to give 2 winners, and I've given the runner-up to Hannah Neeson. winning speech to Hannah Lever. So there must be something in the name Hannah tonight. Thank you. Thank you everybody for sharing of yourselves and sharing with all of us. Thank you.